He no longer had that sense of inner peace from within. He stopped training towards the end of his life. He lost a lot of weight. And they said that, to try to lower the stress, he started to chew on cannabis, started to eat cannabis brownies. And through this cannabis, it says that he ended up getting an allergic reaction to the cannabis and had a near-death experience when he passed out and vomiting and got rushed to the hospital. And the doctors told him not to eat that cannabis anymore. But he didn't listen. He continued to eat it, and eventually he ended up getting that headache, taking the pill, and never waking up again. But he was saying that the cannabis was taking his mind away from all the stress, getting him more relaxed, and living that life that he did, being a workaholic, continually going at fast pace, not getting any sleep, not eating right, not sleeping right, took a toll on his body, and then he ended up dying because of it. Now, it was said that the husband of Linda, the ex-husband, said that he divorced Linda, and he ended up coming out with new information about Bruce. But it was very negative information. He said that Bruce was taking like anabolic steroids towards the time of his death. Now the author was saying that this was the only person that ever said this about Bruce. Now whether or not that is true, that's something that only Bruce would know, and maybe Linda. But Linda would not want to share that information if it is true, because then it would take away part of his legendary status. It would, in a sense, destroy part of his reputation. Now, the author was saying, how could he be taking steroids if he kept losing weight? Because if you take steroids, then you should be gaining weight, because then you're gaining muscle mass. In a sense, that's true. Because he kept losing weight, and, you wonder if that accusation of him taking steroids is true, because he was losing weight, he wasn't gaining weight. But at the same time, if you look at his body in his other movies, it was more of a natural development. His earlier movies, like Big Boss, Fist of Fury, Way of the Dragon, is more of a natural development. More natural, his body. But when you see Enter the Dragon, you see his body is extremely cut. Very cut. To the point where you can see every little muscle fiber. Now you wonder, it's a possibility if steroids was the reasons why he might have gotten that cut. And also back then, they didn't really know the effects of steroids. And back then, they didn't know the effects of crack, cocaine, of cannabis, steroids. All these new things coming out, people didn't know the effects of it, so they just tried it. You see how Elvis Presley got addicted to cocaine. That ended up taking his life early. You see Arnold Schwarzenegger around that time was taking steroids. You see Sylvester Stallone admitted that he takes steroids. Now I don't respect the people that take steroids, but I do respect that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone admitted that they did take it. I respect that, because at least they're being truthful, and at least they're saying, hey, we took it and that's why we look this way. But what I don't like is when people take it and they act as if they don't take it, and then it really gives the audience a false perception of reality. The audience may think that they got to that high level of bodybuilding naturally, when really it's unnatural, and then it makes people strive for something that is not achievable. And I think that's horrible for society. Now, if Bruce Lee took the steroids, there's a possibility. You know, he did take the cannabis to help relax him. So, if it's steroids and it's going to help make your muscles more defined, then why wouldn't you take it? If he already would take cannabis to relax him, why wouldn't he take the steroids to enhance his muscle definition? So there is quite a possibility that he did take it. Now, if that is true or not, it really can't be proven. But if you look at his films, you see the obvious, clear difference between the way he looked in Enter of the Dragon and the way he looked in his prior films. And through my own personal experiences in training and weightlifting and calisthenics and bodybuilding and martial arts training, I could say that to get as defined as Bruce Lee was is extremely difficult, and it takes a lot of training, and it's very unhealthy. There's no way you could get that defined without practicing unhealthy things, no matter if it's taking steroids, taking some other type of supplement, dehydrating yourself, changing your eating habits so you don't eat certain foods, and really putting your body through a lot of suffering in order to get that cut. So something he was doing to get to that cut. And he'll say in the book where he achieved 1% body fat. Really, that's not good. That's not healthy. That's extremely unhealthy. So the way that Bruce Lee trained, I do not agree with. He was training very unhealthy. He was so concerned about what other people thought around him. He wanted to prove that he was the best in the world. And he also, it would be clear that he wanted to prove that he's very fit and strong. So I would not, if it was true that he took the steroids, I wouldn't be too surprised, because he was overly concerned about the people around him and what they thought. It was even saying that one of his former Wing Chun, because by the time he got really famous, there was a lot of gossip going around everywhere in the papers. All these stories everywhere, just to get the public riled up. And it said that one of his former Wing Chun instructors, one of the papers said that his former Wing Chun instructor said that, yeah, Bruce Lee was knocked down by somebody else. And Bruce read that article and he got really upset about it. And he contacted the Wing Chun teacher and asked him if that was true, if he actually said that. The teacher said it was not true. He didn't say that. But Bruce Lee was really affected by the things that were said by other people. And he didn't want his status as being the #1 fighter to ever be destroyed. And it caused a lot of stress for him, on him mentally and on him physically. And really, all of this is against the way. It's against the Tao. It's against Buddha's way. It's not the spiritual way. All of this unhealthy training is not the spiritual way. I talk about cage fighting being very unhealthy, but now when I analyze Bruce, his way of training is very unhealthy as well. He may not have hurt other people, but he hurt himself a lot. to the point where he ended up dying really early. It's kind of like cage fighting is unhealthy because you're hurting other people, and you can be hurting yourself as well. But also, you gotta look at the other side. Bodybuilding is an example of where you don't hurt other people, but you hurt yourself by taking steroids, by dehydrating yourself, and things of that nature. So really, Bruce Lee was not following the way to that it should have been. Now I go back to expressing that I did view him as like a father figure. So what I'm saying is that he's not perfect. So what I'm basically pointing out are the things that could have been improved so that as martial artists we can improve ourselves and not do the same things, the same mistakes that Bruce might have followed, so that we could take ourselves to a higher level. And that's why I'm pointing out this, is to get people to realize that he was not the ultimate. Because if he was the ultimate, he wouldn't have been lacking in that spiritual. He was lacking in the spiritual in living it. And ultimately that's what ended up taking his life early. Because you're so concerned about what other people thought around him, so concerned about getting famous, so concerned about making lots of money. And in order to do that in Western society, in a capitalistic society, you're gonna have to step over people. And that's what he ended up doing, stepping over other people to get on top. He did it in a different way. Now you got the cage fighting way, which is a more very violent way. But then the way that Bruce went is not as violent. It's not as bad, but really, it's not healthy either. Both ways is very stressful. But I see that Western society, they don't really know much about Kung Fu. And Bruce was the only person that really, one of the very few people that would express what Kung Fu is. And he had the ability to communicate with the West because he was born in America and he learned the language, learned the English language, was able to read and write, so he could communicate with the Western society and give us a better understanding of the way of the East. Now there was a quote in one of the books that said, from Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan said, I practice the martial arts, but I'm a stuntman. Bruce Lee was a true martial artist. He was the true martial artist, representing true martial arts. But I'm just a stuntman that knows some martial arts. And I see that, first, to be very humble, and also that it's very true. I see Jackie Chan to be more of a stuntman. Now he obviously practices Kung Fu because he's really good at what he does. But as far as martial arts is concerned, he is not like representing the real martial arts. Bruce Lee was representing the real martial arts. Real martial arts in the sense of where you're training for real survival combat, like combat that really is meant to defend you, protect you from harm.